The warehouse door was being torn open by police officers when Elara realized the syringe in Marcus's hand contained something that would erase her completely. She had one final card to play, a pair of black-rimmed glasses streaming everything to the cloud. But first, she would have to survive the next 3 seconds. 13 hours earlier, the evening had begun in silence. Elara sat at the white marble kitchen island, her left hand gripping a silver fork. She pushed a cold piece of grilled salmon across a porcelain plate, the metal scraping against the ceramic with a soft, deliberate sound. The steady rhythm of rain drummed against the window pane outside, and above her head, a single pendant light cast sharp shadows across the minimalist kitchen. Her shoulders slumped, her eyes fixed downward. Her lips were tight, pressed into a thin line. Marcus sat opposite her, eyes glued to a black smartphone resting on his right thigh. His thumb scrolled rapidly through the glowing screen, illuminating his face in an eerie blue light. He ate a forkful of rice without looking up. The faint tapping of his thumb on glass continued. Tap, tap, tap. A rhythm that filled the space where conversation should have been. The phone screen showed a scrolling news feed with blurry images of cityscapes and headlines he clearly found more interesting than the woman sitting across from him. Elara cleared her throat and looked up. She reached out her right hand toward Marcus's free hand resting on the table, extending her fingers across the white marble surface. 2 inches. That was the distance she could manage. Her fingertips were pale against the gray veins of the marble, trembling slightly. She took a sharp breath. "I was thinking," she said, her voice soft and fragile, wavering like a question. "Maybe we could go for a walk? Just us?" Marcus didn't lift his head. He tapped the phone screen twice, once, then again, and sighed. It was a long, heavy sound that deflated the air in the room, the kind of sigh that suggested she had asked him to move mountains. His jaw tightened. He remained focused only on the screen, and in the polished stovetop behind him, his reflection stared back at her with the same indifference. "I'm behind on the quarterly report, Elara," he said, his voice flat and robotic, each word final. "Not tonight." Elara pulled her hand back and clenched it into a fist on her lap. She turned away from him and looked at the rain-streaked window. The streetlights outside blurred into yellow smudges through the water. Her eyes began to glass over with unshed tears, and her jaw clenched so tightly she thought her teeth might crack. The wind whistled through the window frame, a lonely sound in the silence between them. The rest of the meal passed without a word. When Marcus finally left the table, he didn't touch the plate she had prepared. He simply took his phone and his dismissal with him into the study, closing the door with a click that sounded like a lock. Elara sat alone in the kitchen for a long time. Then she stood, grabbed her trench coat, and walked out into the rain. The copper tap was exactly the kind of place Marcus pretended not to frequent. Dark, smoky, the kind of bar where businessmen went to be someone other than who they were at home. Elara pushed through the heavy oak double doors and stood by the coat rack, her trench coat dripping water onto the sawdust floor. The loud jazz music assaulted her ears, a wall of sound and bass that seemed to physically push against her chest. Neon red letters spelling beer flickered overhead. Her eyes darted from face to face, searching. She found him in a corner booth. Marcus was leaning in close to a woman with platinum blonde hair. His hand was on her wrist. He was laughing, a genuine, unguarded laugh that Elara had not heard directed at her in months, maybe longer. The contrast was so stark, it felt like looking at a photograph of a stranger. This version of Marcus, relaxed, expressive, animated, seemed to exist only when she was not in the room. The woman had red lipstick, and it was smeared slightly at the corner of her mouth. Among the whiskey glasses, and the intimate positioning, Elara saw the full landscape of her husband's betrayal. She marched to the table. Without thinking, without hesitation, she grabbed Marcus's half-full whiskey glass and flung the contents into his face. The brown liquid sprayed across his features, dripping from his nose and chin. A collective gasp rose from the surrounding tables. The splash of liquid hit the booth's leather with a wet sound. "Is this the quarterly report, Marcus?" she demanded, her voice shaking with fury. Marcus stood up violently. The table lurched forward, its legs screeching against the floor. He grabbed Elara's upper arms and shoved her backward into a wooden pillar. The impact knocked the air from her lungs, a dull thud echoing in the space. His eyes were wide and dark with anger, his teeth bared. "Get the hell out of here," he roared, loud enough to draw more eyes. "You're insane." The blonde woman stood up and retreated into the crowd, abandoning them both. Elara clawed at Marcus's hands, her nails digging into the skin of his knuckles until beads of blood appeared, small rubies against his white skin. She kicked him in the shin with her leather boot, her desperation fueling a strength she didn't know she possessed. The scuff of their shoes on the floor, the sound of patrons' gasps, a crowd forming in a circle around them, watching. Marcus let go of one arm to wipe blood from his shin. He stared at Elara with cold detachment. His pupils dilated to black pools. Then he leaned in, close enough that only she could hear, and whispered something that stopped her, fighting cold. "She isn't my mistress, Elara," he said, his voice deadly low. "She's your sister's lawyer. Look at the documents on the table." Elara's eyes shifted to the table. Among the spilled whiskey were several legal papers, now damp and curling at the edges. The header read, "Estate of Sarah Miller. Notice of incompetency." Her sister's name, in bold black ink. Everything else fell away. The apartment was silent when Elara fumbled with her keys at the front door. Her hands were still shaking from the bar, still burning with adrenaline and confusion. She dropped the keys, and they jangled on the floor mat. The hallway light was bright and sterile, fluorescent and cold. She looked down. An unfamiliar set of keys lay by the baseboard. Bright pink keychain with an S. Exactly the kind of keychain her sister Sarah had carried for years. The keys belonged to Sarah. They had to. Elara picked them up. Attached to the ring was a small USB drive, capped in blue plastic. She gripped it tight, the edges digging into her palm. The drive had "Confidential" written in silver marker across its surface. Her hands had stopped shaking. A car horn honked in the distance. Dust motes danced in the hallway light. She unlocked the apartment door and walked inside. In the dark living room, Elara sat on the sofa with her silver MacBook open on her knees. The screen brightness illuminated her face in a ghoulish white. She plugged in the USB. The cooling fan of the laptop started up with a whirring sound. On the screen, a folder appeared. Exhibit A, E. Miller. She clicked the first video file. It was a hidden camera angle of their kitchen from 2 weeks ago. Elara recognized the sweater she'd been wearing that day, the gray one. In the video, Marcus sat calmly eating while Elara cried in the corner. The video had been edited with surgical precision to remove Marcus's provocations. The muffled sound of her own sobbing came through the laptop speakers. The timestamp in the corner read 14/10/2023, 08/22/15. She scrolled through another file, a document titled Psych Eval Transcript. It contained out-of-context quotes from her, marked with red annotations like indicative of paranoia and emotional volatility. Red underlines covered the words, "I can't take this anymore." Her heart began to race. Sweat appeared on her forehead. The clicking of the trackpad seemed impossibly loud. Then she found the email draft. It was from Marcus to Sarah's lawyer, dated just hours ago. The subject line read, "Final evidence package." The text read, "She's getting worse. The incident at the bar tonight will be the final proof we need for the commitment order." The send button was blue and glowing. Terror flooded through her. Her hands dropped to her sides. The laptop slid down her legs as she tried to process what she was seeing. The heavy rain outside turned into a downpour, drumming against the windows with increasing intensity. That was when she heard the front door slam open. The heavy slam echoed through the apartment. Marcus stood there, his shirt still damp from whiskey. He saw the laptop immediately and the blue USB drive's light blinking in the dark room. His eyes narrowed. His hands formed fists. His shadow fell across the sofa. "That doesn't belong to you," he said, his voice cold and threatening. Elara grabbed the laptop and bolted. She dodged Marcus as he lunged for her, her shoulder glancing off his chest. She ran into the concrete hallway, her sneakers squeaking on the tiles as she heard him grunt behind her, missing her by inches. The bright hallway lights reflected in her terrified eyes as she pushed forward. She hit the crash bar of the stairwell door. The metal door swung open, and she began sprinting down the metal stairs, her hand gripping the cold steel railing. The metal stairs rang beneath her feet. Clang, clang, clang as she descended. Marcus's footsteps thundered above her, 2 levels behind, growing closer. She pushed harder, faster. "Stop, Elara!" His voice boomed and echoed through the stairwell. "You're only proving me right." The spiral of the stairs seemed to stretch endlessly downward. Her legs burned, her breath came in gasps. She could hear him getting closer, the sound of his pursuit relentless and methodical. Then he was there. Marcus leaped down the last 4 steps of a flight, landing hard. His hand shot out and grabbed the back of her black hoodie. She was jerked backward, her feet leaving the ground for a second. The fabric of the hoodie stretched and began to tear slightly. Her laptop case swung dangerously near the edge of the railing. Elara swung the laptop bag like a mace. It connected with Marcus squarely in the side of his head. He staggered, his grip loosening. She used the momentum to push him harder. He fell back against the fire extinguisher glass cabinet. The glass cracked, a spider web of fractures spreading across its surface, but not breaking completely. He clutched his temple, his eyes unfocused for a split second. That was all she needed. The alley exit door burst open. Elara ran into the street and was drenched instantly by the rain. She sprinted toward her blue sedan parked under a streetlight. She was sobbing, shivering, clutching the laptop to her chest. Steam rose from the asphalt around her. Distant sirens wailed. Heavy rain drummed on car roofs. She reached the car and tried to unlock the door with her remote. The lights flashed. The alarm chirped. But as she looked down, her stomach dropped. Both driver's side tires were completely flat, the rubber sliced open in long, clean lines. Knife marks were visible in the sidewall of the tires. She fell to her knees. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She had no car. She had no phone that would work for long. And Marcus was coming. The old warehouse by the docks was the only place she could think to go. The doors were rusted but still functional. And the interior offered the shadows she needed. Elara sat behind a stack of shipping crates, attempting to use her phone to call her sister. The call went straight to voicemail. Her phone screen showed 0% battery warning. The phone was dying. Her sister wasn't answering. The warehouse's high-pressure sodium lights flickered on. Marcus walked down the center aisle. His shadow stretched 30 feet long across the floor. He was carrying a heavy iron tire iron in his right hand. His shirt was torn at the shoulder. Blood ran down the side of his face from where her laptop had struck him. But his expression remained calm, almost serene. He looked methodical, purposeful. His jaw was set. "You gave me everything." The document was real. She had signed it. She remembered the day now. Marcus had been so helpful, so supportive. He had handled everything while she'd been drowning in despair and confusion. She had given him power of attorney over Sarah's affairs without fully understanding what that meant. She had handed him a key to destroy her. Elara scrambled up a vertical ladder to the catwalk above. Marcus was right behind her, grabbing her ankle. She kicked down with her heel, hitting him in the mouth. A dull crunch echoed as her heel connected with his teeth. He roared, a muffled sound of pain and fury. Blood sprayed onto the ladder rungs, speckling the steel. Marcus pulled himself up onto the catwalk, spitting blood. He swung the tire iron. It hit a steam pipe next to Elara's head. White steam hissed out violently, obscuring everything in a thick cloud. The catwalk shook under their combined weight as they struggled. Elara tackled Marcus around the waist, driving him back against the railing. They both staggered. The railing groaned, a weld snapping with a sharp report that sounded like a gunshot. They were 30 feet above the concrete floor. One more failure and they'd fall. Marcus punched Elara in the ribs. She gasped and doubled over, the wind knocked from her lungs. He grabbed the laptop bag from her shoulder and held it out over the edge of the railing. His knuckles were white where he gripped it. "Goodbye, evidence," he hissed. Elara lunged forward, not for the bag, but for Marcus's eyes. She gouged her thumbs into his eye sockets with everything she had. Marcus screamed, a high-pitched sound of agony and shock. He reflexively dropped the bag. It fell onto a passing conveyor belt below, the clunk of impact echoing through the warehouse. The conveyor belt carried it away, toward the dark opening of a shredder unit. Elara watched as the laptop disappeared into the black opening. The grinding sound of the shredder started, a horrible mechanical sound. She had lost the evidence. All of it. Marcus forced her down onto the catwalk floor, using his weight to pin her. His face was wild now, one eye beginning to swell shut. He pulled a pre-filled medical syringe from his jacket pocket. The needle glinted under the sodium lights. A clear liquid bead hung at the tip. He pressed the syringe down, holding it inches from her neck. The label on the syringe read, "Haloperidol." "The paramedics will find you incoherent," he said, his voice low and soothing in a way that was more terrifying than any scream. "It's for your own good." Elara looked around. The conveyor belt had carried the laptop into the shredder. Her phone was dead. There were no exits she could reach. No one knew where she was. No one was coming. Everything was lost. Then she looked at her glasses, the black-rimmed glasses she wore. She stopped struggling. She looked directly into Marcus's face and reached up to tap the side of the frame. A tiny blue LED on the frame, previously unnoticed, flickers twice. "The laptop was a decoy, Marcus," she said, and her voice was sharp and biting now. "I bought these for Sarah's protection. They've been streaming to my lawyer's cloud since I entered the bar." Marcus froze. The syringe trembled in his hand. His eye, the one that wasn't swelling shut, widened with realization. The warehouse doors were suddenly bathed in blue and red strobing lights. Multiple sirens wailed outside. Tires screeched on the wet gravel. Marcus reached for the glasses, but his hand shook. The orange warehouse light clashed with the police strobes, creating a kaleidoscope of color and shadow. 4 police officers in tactical gear rushed in, weapons drawn. The "Police! Hands in the air!" Command was simultaneous and overwhelming. Marcus dropped the syringe. It shattered on the floor, the precious liquid spreading across the concrete. An officer kicked the tire iron away and forced Marcus's face into the floor. He clicked silver handcuffs onto Marcus's wrists. The metal ratchet sound, click, 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 was loud in the vast space. Marcus was silent, looking at Elara with one final look of pure, empty coldness. His bloody face pressed against the dirty floor. His eye was swollen completely shut now. The officers helped Elara to her feet. One draped a blanket around her shoulders. Another was already calling for paramedics. Through the strobing lights, she caught sight of her lawyer, standing in the doorway, arms crossed, face grim with satisfaction. The sun rose pale orange on the horizon as Elara stood at the wrought-iron gates of Clearview Manor. 6 hours had passed since Marcus's arrest. She was exhausted, bandaged on her arms, but her eyes were clear. She held a new manila envelope. Inside was the temporary injunction she had secured through her lawyer early that morning. Documents that would immediately suspend Marcus's power of attorney over Sarah's affairs and order Sarah's release from the facility where she had been admitted just 12 hours earlier. The gates clicked open. Elara pulled a small photograph from her locket. It was her and Sarah as children, smiling at the beach. Sarah in a yellow swimsuit, Elara in a blue one. A moment before, everything became complicated. She touched Sarah's face with a bandaged fingertip. "I'm here, Sarah," she whispered, her voice firm. "He's gone." She walked through the gate. She did not look back at the city. She walked slowly but steadily toward the main building, the stone porch rising before her. Her footsteps echoed on the gravel path. The long shadow of the gate closed behind her as she entered the shadow of the porch.